This is Gemara Yevamos, Daf Yomi. All the learning has been generously sponsored. An incredible schos. Refuah Shlema for Chedvalei Bas Saradina Mirtashem. The learning of the entire Chabura. The schos of Talmud Torah Barabim should bring Chedvalei Bas Saradina, an incredible and complete Refuah Shlema, as well as learning Shvias Choshira V'Shachem Devar Tamsib Bas Baruch Hashem Levizava V'Deli Shem Ben Chaya V'Lam Yehudis Bas Siva Malka, as well as Refuah Shlema Shal Yosef and Yefei Deshmon Adilam Tamsib V'Chlas Nacham Bas Shiva Sarah Blum Bas Mindo Chaim Yeshua ben Malka B'Shavegu Sheichana B'Seich Shar Chayli Yisrael. We're holding on the last line of Samach Dalid Amid Beis. This is actually Daf Samachay. I'm not sure what I said before. But we're in the middle of a discussion. What is a chazaka? Machlekes Rebbe versus Rav Shimon Gamliel. Rebbe says 2 times is a chazaka. Rav Shimon Gamliel says 3 times. We concluded yesterday with 2 conflicting brises, 2 conflicting halachas. Halacha like Rebbe, halacha like Rav Shimon Gamliel. And the Gemara explained it depends on the case. By Nisuan and Malkis, we go with Rebbe. By Vestes and Sharamud, we go like Rav Shimon Gamliel. So yesterday we concluded in the cases that we go like Rebbe, and now we continue with the cases like we go Rav Shimon Gamliel. Vestes der Tzanan. What is the case of Vestes as we learned? Eina Isha, woman does not, as we turn over to Samachay Amar Aleph, Koivas law vest does not create a set pattern, a set vest. A vest is the assumption that this is when her period is going to come. This is when she didn't have her menstrual period, and on that date she's going to be usher to her husband. So she does not kaiveya, she does not create that assumption, she does not create that chazaka until she sees 3 times. So we see like Rav Shimon Gamliel that what is a vest, what is the chazaka for vest? 3 different times. And finally he says the Gemara of Shar Amud, what is the case of Shar Amud? It's nan Eina Shar Nas Amud Achiidu Bai Shalosh Pamim. There's only going to be created a Shar Amud with all the dinim, the entirety of Bava Kama, that a Shar has an assumption that it's going to gore if it gores 3 different times. Says the Gemara, let's go back to which we were discussing yesterday and the day before, the din of a woman who unfortunately does not have children. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, 5 lines from the top of Samachay Amar Aleph. If a woman is married to a man, she doesn't have children. L'sheni, she marries the second man. She has no children. L'shlishi loitinasi, says the Brisa, she's not allowed to marry a third husband. Ella lami sheyesh loibanim. She could only marry someone that already has children, because we're assuming after 2 times she's unable to have children, and therefore she should not marry a third man that does not have children. Niseis lami she'ein loibanim. Let's say she did. She shouldn't have, but she went and she married someone that has no children. What is the halacha? She leaves, she gets divorced, and she doesn't get her ksuba. She should not have done it. She already had 2 different husbands that had no children. The third one she should not have married, and if she does, she does not get her ksuba. But now, based on that, ask the Gemara a fundamental shayla. Ibaylu nises l'shlishi below hayulaybanim maud latvinu hanach kamay. What if she marries a third husband, and the third husband she has no children? What about, do we go backwards, and can the first 2 husbands demand their ksuba? As we learned yesterday, that when the first husband divorces her, we don't know, is it him, is it her? And therefore, the first husband has to pay her ksuba. The second husband has to pay her ksuba. But if she goes and marries a third husband, still has no children, clearly showing us it was she with the problem, can husband 1 and 2 come back and say, hey, we paid you, we want our money back, we want to get our ksuba back because it's clear it was your fault and not mine? Explains the Gemara, Mi Matzi Amri La, are they able to say to her, it's clear, it's revealed, we now know it is you with the problem, so give us back the ksuba that we paid you? Or she can say, no, until now, maybe it was your problem. Now my body grew weak, now it's my problem, but not necessarily is the fact that now I'm not having children a proof that originally unfortunately, the first two husbands, it was also my fault, and therefore I don't have to give you back the ksuba. So ask the Gemara, fundamental shayla, is she going to have to go and give back the money of the ksuba? Explains the Gemara, mistavra matzi amr lo ashtu dekashu. It's mistaver. It's illogical that she does not have to repay the ksuba. She could say it was your problem. Now I turned weak and I don't have to refund the ksuba. Ibayilu, a second shayla. Nises l'ravi. Let's say after the third husband had no children, she went to a fourth husband. V'hayu loibanim, and Baruch Hashem simchais. She has a child. Now what do we do? Now can she go back? Can she go to the third husband who did not pay her ksuba and say to him, listen, pay up? Clearly I had children for the fourth husband. The fact that I didn't have from you is your problem. So pay me up the ksuba. Amrina Allah. Explains the Gemara, no, we tell her, being quiet is better for you than talking. Don't say anything. Why? Because you know what the third husband could say to her? I didn't divorce you for this. I didn't divorce you with the knowledge that you're able to have children. The reason I divorced you was because you cannot have children. Now that I can see that you can have children, my whole divorce is null and void. And what would then happen? What would happen is the child that's going to now be born is going to be invalid, is going to be illegitimate because the divorce is invalid. So we tell her, keep your mouth shut. If you're going to go back to the third husband and claim back your ksuba, the husband could potentially claim that the whole divorce is null and void, and therefore the child that is about to be born is an illegitimate child. Says the Gemara, one second. You just told me that the husband has an ability to go backwards and say, I only divorced you with that mindset and thereby invalidate the divorce. Asks Rabba, says the Gemara, it sounds like if she keeps her mouth shut, everything's fine. The get of the third husband was good. The child from the fourth husband is good. Says the Gemara, what? It has to do with you open your mouth? We in Bezdin know the truth. Are we going to keep her mouth shut? Nimsa get batul b'nei mamzerim. The whole get was predicated on the fact she couldn't have children. Now clearly she could have children, so the get should inherently be void. Who cares if she opens her mouth? Who cares if the first husband says anything? Inherently, we in Bezdin know it's not true, and therefore the children should automatically be mamzerim. Says the Gemara. So if that is true, then why shouldn't that third husband have to pay the ksuba as well? Ella, you know the reason why in the first white line, Amrina, we say, Hashtu de Braisa. No, now is when the issue happened. Now she became better. Originally she couldn't have children, and now she became healthy, and therefore, again, it does not necessarily show us retroactively what happened. Therefore, the fact the third husband did not pay, it continues that way, and then we move on. Says the Gemara, now we go into a little bit of the dinam of ksuba, exactly what's going to happen in these cases in which they had to get divorced due to the fact that she cannot have children. So says the Gemara, Hu amar mina v'hi amra minei. If each one, we have a debate between the husband and wife, who is the one that caused the fact that they cannot have children? Who amar mina? He says it was your problem that we couldn't have children. V'hi amra, and she says minei. It was his problem. Who is the one that has the nemanis? Amar Rav Ami on the second white line. Dvarim shebeinoi lebeina. This is something between the two of them. Only a husband and wife can know who is the one that caused it, and therefore she is believed. Why is she believed? V'taimamai explains the Gemara. She could know. The only way, and Rashi over here explains that the only way an act of intercourse could produce a child is if the zera, if the semen comes out kechetz, it shoots out with force like an arrow. So she has the ability to feel whether it came out like an arrow, whether it came out with force when it went inside of her. So she could claim no. But he does not necessarily know. He knows that he had relations, he knows that he ejaculated, he knows that there was semen, but he doesn't necessarily know whether it came out with force or not, and therefore he has no namanis. Namanis, only she has the namanis. Says the Gemara, fine, that's a case number one, when it's a fight, him versus her, who was the one that caused it? Omar iu izel insiv itza ve'evdoik nafshay. Says the Gemara, what happens if the husband says, I'm going to go marry another wife? And if that second wife has children, that shows it wasn't my problem. So says the Gemara, we have a fight between husband and wife here. They couldn't have children for 10 years. They're getting divorced. And the husband says, I don't want to pay your ksuba because it's your problem. And you know what? I'm going to prove to you it's your problem because I'm going to go marry another woman. I'm going to have children for the next woman. That will show that I'm not the one that has fertility issues. It's you. Does the husband has to have a believability to say that? So Amar Ravami explains Ravami af bezu yoitzav itin ksuba. Even in this case, he has to pay the ksuba. Why? Because I could say, you know the reason is because anytime you marry a second wife, you have to pay the first wife her ksuba. That is what that's Rav Ami's pshat. But Rava says no. In the last line, you let him marry as many women as you want, as long as you could afford it, as long as you could support them, and it's not a problem. And therefore, says Rava, it's not necessarily a raya. Continues the Gemara. But what happens on Amr Beis? Who Amr afalta beguyaser? The Amr lo afalta. We said in the Mishnah that if there was an iful, if there was a miscarriage, that resets the 10-year clock. So ask the Gemara, what happens if again there's a fight? The husband says there was a miscarriage, and therefore I don't have to divorce you yet. And she says, no, there was no miscarriage, and therefore you have to divorce me. What is the din? Amr Avami Apazu, Hina Mena, she's believed him. He said that because you know why she's believed? Because she would never want people to say that she's infertile. She'd rather say that she had a miscarriage and thereby stay married. And if she's claiming not, it must be she is believed. But continues the Gemara and says that Hipila, if she indeed had a miscarriage, v'chazar v'pila, and then she had another miscarriage, Rachmana l'tzlan, v'chazar v'pila, hochzikul in a fallen, that she has a chazaka, that she has miscarriages, and then he has to divorce her right away. Let's say we have a fight. How many miscarriages there were? The husband says there was only 2. I don't have to divorce you, and the wife says there were 3, and therefore you have to divorce me. Amar Rabbi ben Elazar of the Avim Josh. There was such a story. She is believed him. Because if it didn't actually happen, she would never want to have a chazaka, to have an assumption that she's a woman that has miscarriages. And if she's saying there were 3, it must be that is indeed what happened. And now, as we're going to conclude this parak, we go back to what we've been discussing the past few days, the din of pruvu, the din of the basic obligation. We already mentioned this din, but now we'll be able to see it inside. Says the Mishnah, Ha'ish mitzvah al perav revya, a man is commanded on peruvu. Avalo yoyisha, a woman does not have a mitzvah peruvu. Rav Yechon Braika Omer al Shneim Omer, both of them have a mitzvah. Vayvarch Oisam Elokim v'yomer lehem Elokim peruvu, the mitzvah peruvu, the mitzvah of having children. Says Rav Yechon ben Braika, is not only on the husband but even on the wife. And says the Gemara Minani, immediately from where do we get this din? Where does the Tanakama know that the mitzvah is only on the man? Amar Rav Ilah Mishum Rav Lazar Rav Shimon. Amar Kra, it says in the Torah, Molas Haaretz v'Kavsuha, and he filled the earth and he conquered it. And what do we learn out from the fact that Torah wrote Molas Haaretz Pruvu next to Kavshua? Ish darkly kavish, v'nisha darkly kavish. A woman doesn't conquer, and therefore it's honing in. Says Rav Ilah Mishum Rav Rav Shimon that it's only a man that has his din of Aretz and not a woman. Ask the Gemara, v'kavshua tarti mashma. It's plural. It refers to 2 people. So Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, a new source, v'kavsha ksiv. No, it's written v'kavsha, which is in this singular. So that's source number 1, that the mitzvah peruvu is only on the man, according to the Tanakhama. Rav Yosef Amar, a second source, me'acha ani kel shakai. I am Kel Shakai, be fruitful and multiply. But like Amar Peru or Vu, the Torah writes it in the singular, explains Rav Yosef to hone in that it's only on the man, the mitzvah, not on the woman. Ve'amar Rav Ilah Mishum Rav Shimon, once we say one statement of Rav Lazar, from Rav Ilah we say another. Kishem shemitzvah la'adam leimer davar shenishma, kal mitzvah adam shaloi leimer davar sheina nishma. Just like you have a mitzvah to repeat that which way you heard, you have a mitzvah not to say rebuke if it will not be accepted. Rav Abba Amar Chayva, says Rav Amma, not only is it a mitzvah to not say, to not give teichacha if someone's going to ignore it, it's a chiyuv to not say such words. Shenamar al teichich leitz penisanecha, don't give that teichacha if they're not going to listen. V'amar Rav Ilah, third statement of Rav Ilah, 8 lines on the wide lines, Mishum Rav Shimon Adam, Lishad Nois B'Davar HaShalom. We mentioned a few days ago, you're allowed to change the word in order to promote peace. Shenamar avicha tziva, as the pasuk says, your father commanded. That they should say, oh, please forgive me. And explains the Gemara, mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to do such. Perhaps Shaul's going to hear and he's going to kill me. So Hashem said, then you'll bring a carbon. And continues the Gemara, Shina boy, the very famous Gemara, the Meir Kark said, Hashem himself changed the words in order to promote peace, in order that Sarah, when she is laughing, Avram Avinu will not be insulted, for honing in and proving to us that when it comes to Shalom, you're allowed to change in order to affect peace. Continues the Gemara on the first white line of Yecham and Breika Amar. This is the second sheet of the Mishnah, that the din of Pruvu is not only on the husband, but rather is both on man and woman to have this mitzvah. So Itmar Rav Yecham and Rav Yeshua ben Levi Charamar Alach Rav Yecham and Breika Charamar Ein Alach Breika. We have a stira whether we paskin like Rav Yecham and Breika or not. And says the Gemara, Tistayim, let's bring a raya to Rav Yecham who Damar Ein Alacha. The Rav Yechon is one to say we don't paskin like this way. The Yosef Rav Avua becoming Mishmei Rav Yechon. Rav Avua is sitting in the name of Rav Yechon and Halacha. V'adinu Rav Ami Rav Asi Lapayo. And when he said that Halacha is like Rav Yechon and Broika, Rav Ami and Rav Asi turned their face away. So this shows us that they knew that he was saying Rav Yechon incorrectly, for the fact that they turned their face, that you're quoting Rav Yechon incorrectly, and rather Rav Yechon does not hold like Rav Yechon and Rav Broika. That's the first way of learning. V'yigad Yamri, a second Lashon of Chibar Abba Amar V'adrinu Rav Ami Rav Asi Lapayu. So Rav Chibar Abba said it, and then it was Rav Ami and Rav Asi that turned away their face, and that's the second way of showing the psak halacha. But Amar Papa, on the second way of learning Bishlam, the man Amar Avua Amar for Avua is one that said over this din. Because the Caesar, they're nervous about him, what he would say, and therefore, because Rav Avua hung out with the Caesar, so that's why they didn't correct him, and that's why they just turned their face without saying anything. But Elulaman Amar Rav Chia bar Abba Amar, according to the second lashon, that it was Rav Chia bar Abba was one that reported this din. Lamer Le, Lamer Rav Yechon. Why don't they just say Rav Yechon never said this? So finally concludes the Gemara, Mayavi Allah Maisa. What's the maskana? What does Rav Yechon hold? Let's bring a raya. Toshemad Amar Rav Acha bar Chanina Amar Rav Avu Amar Rav Asi Ovda Avikamid Rav Yechon. There was a story, Bekanishna the Kesri in the shul of the Caesar, and he said, because there was a woman who was demanding a divorce, a gap, because her husband didn't have children, and Rav Yechon said, divorce and give a ksuba. And if you're going to tell me that the woman is no obligation, that the obligation of Pruvu, like the Tanakama, is only on the husband, ksuba ma'avidate, why are we paying her? The ksuba must be that she as well has a chiyuv. Says Mar, what's your ayah? Maybe the case is that the reason why she got the ksuba is because she had a good claim. Similar, explains the Gemara. 10 lines to the bottom, the first line is machmas. The one that came from Rav Ami and Amrulay, havli ksuba. Amar la zil loimifgadis. Say, get out of here. You're not commanded on Pruvu. Amrulay misivu dila. But what happened? What happened is that one more time. So Amar Lei Havlik Suba and Amar Lei Zil Rami said leave. Loi Mifkadata, you have no obligation of Puravu. So Amar Lei, she responds, Misivu Dila Maita Havi Allah Da'ach. It's a. But says this woman, what's going to become of myself in my old age? Who's going to take care of me? Omar, when he heard this, Rav Ami said, Ki havadai kafinan. This we certainly force the husband to divorce her and give her ksuba, and similarly that's how Rav Yechon is going to learn. And the Gemara concludes with a story. Hida said like Rav Nachman, Amar la lo mifkadata Amar lei lo yibayilach itza. But she responded, but does this woman refer to herself nanid chotra liyadei, a cane to hold on to when she gets old, umar likvura, and a shovel to bury her? Amar Rav Nachman said, Ki avadei kafina, for this we certainly force the husband to divorce his wife, and yes, give the ksuba. Yehuda v'Chizkiah tu'umim. Yehuda and Chizkiah were twins. Echa Nigmar Surasal Saif Tisha. One of them was created at the end of 9 months in the Mami's womb. Echa Nigmar Surasal Tchila Shiv after 7 months. Yehuda is the Mr. Rav Chia Yehudis, who was the daughter of Rav Chia, the wife of Rav Chia, Havale Tzar Leida. It was very painful for her to have children. Shanai Mana. And she came in front of Rav Chia and Amra and asked Rav Chia, Shanai Mana Va'asi Lekamed Rav Chia Amra, and she said, Itza Mivkaras Aber Revya. She asked Rav Chia, do I have a Chia? Do I myself have an obligation to have children? And Amar Lo, Rav Chia responded, Loi, you do not have such an obligation. Ozla Ishti Samad Akarta, so Yehudis couldn't handle the pain of childbirth anymore. She went and she drank a potion and she became sterile. And the Soifik Lai Milsa, and eventually what happened, they found out that there really was another child there. Amar La, so he said to her, if only you would have given me one more child, if only you would not have drinking that potion earlier. Damar Mar Yehuda v'Chizkiya Asi Pazi. The Amar Mar Yehuda v'Chizkiya Achi, they're brothers. Pazi v'Tavi, those are two names. Are Achvasi, as we turn over, our sisters. V'Lo, and it now concludes the Gemara. V'Loi Mifkeda, is it true what you're saying that a woman doesn't have a chiyuv pruvu? V'Amar Rav Achabar Rav Kitina Rav Yitzchak Ma'isa B'Isha Acha. Seemingly because she has a chiyuv, we made her into a free man. But it's not a raya. They were being mafkir her. They were just acting so inappropriately with her. That's why she made her a free man, not necessarily because of the mitzvah of pruvu. An incredible parak dealing with one of the tenets of Yiddishkeit, having children. One of the first mitzvahs pruvu. We'll pick up for the new parak the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.